A lot of things can go wrong if you don't have the correct nutrients in your diet. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And what is a nutrient? So a nutrient is a basic molecule that is required for our bodies to function. And there are 6 categories. Start off with talking about the macromolecules, carbohydrates. And so first we'll list them here, and then we'll have a slide on each one. Lipids, proteins, water, vitamins, and minerals. And to be healthy, you have to have all of these in your diet. The body can make some of these, and the rest must be taken in with your food. So if the body can make chemicals, they are called non-essential. And if the body cannot make them, then you have to take them in with your food, and they're called essential. Let's start by talking about carbohydrates. A carbohydrate is any molecule with the general formula CH2O. You just think about the structure of that molecule. We have the carbo, or carbon, and then we have the water molecule, which you can think of as hydrating yourself. So inherent in this molecule is a carbon and water. And of course, the most common carbohydrate is going to be glucose, C6H12O6. And notice that for every carbon and oxygen atom, there are 2 atoms of hydrogen, CH2O. Why do we need carbohydrates in our diet? Well, we need carbohydrates for energy. This is our primary energy source, either for quick energy, in which case we'll use glucose, or to store energy, in which case we will store glucose as glycogen in the liver and muscle. So let's look at how we will bring carbohydrates into our bodies. The primary way we bring carbohydrates into our bodies is as starch. And just an example of where we get starch from bread, we get starch from potatoes, we get starch from pasta. Starch is the way plants store their energy. And so notice that pasta, bread, and potatoes are all types of foods that are made from plants. And what starch is long chains of glucose that are strung together by linkages called alpha-1,4 linkages. And if starch goes into our digestive tract, it is broken down by alpha amylase and enzymes called disaccharidases that will break starch down into simple sugars, very similar to this gummy bear. And so when you eat starch, be aware that you are releasing sugar into your bloodstream. And then, of course, that sugar can then later be used for energy, or it can be stored as the molecule glycogen in the liver and muscle. And then it can be broken down later, for example, if you skip a meal. If you eat too much sugar, then glucose will go into fat cells and be converted to triglycerides, which are fat molecules. When you think about taking in starch and how it's converted to sugar in the bloodstream, that probably doesn't sound too good to you. In fact, if you take in too much, you're going to make those fat molecules. But the body really does need some starch and some glucose for energy. You can't get by on a no-carb diet because your body will start breaking down amino acids from proteins to get energy sources, or it will start breaking down fats. It's not a problem to break down fats to get energy, but if your body's only breaking down fats, then eventually that can lead to the buildup of these chemicals called ketones in the bloodstream, and they can create acid blood, which is extremely harmful. But you don't want to eat too much starch. You want to make sure that you eat some other carbs as well. For example, the carbohydrate cellulose, which is found in plant cell walls, is extremely beneficial in your diet. Here you have a molecule of cellulose. And cellulose is also long chains of glucose, but they are in beta-1,4 linkages. And cellulose is found in the cell walls of plants. So any plant could have been put in these pictures. I chose to put celery, spinach, and broccoli. All good kinds of vegetables that are good to have in our diet. And why is cellulose so beneficial in the diet? Cellulose is beneficial actually because we do not have the enzyme that breaks this polysaccharide down into simple sugars. So cellulose will actually not break down into glucose in the digestive tract and will not lead to the absorption of sugar in the bloodstream. But likewise, cellulose itself cannot be absorbed into the bloodstream. So why is it good for us? Well, it's good for us because cellulose is the fiber in your diet. And fiber has the effect of pushing other molecules through the digestive tract. So waste and undigested material goes through the gastrointestinal tract at a faster rate. And what that does is it leads to the prevention of polyps and colon cancer and basically gets rid of your waste faster. So glycogen is a storage molecule for energy in the animal body. Okay, so that means that if you're eating meat, you're probably getting some glycogen as well. But realize that glycogen is broken down after the meat is harvested and also by cooking. And we probably get negligible amounts of glycogen from meat. But it's important to look at glycogen and realize that it is an alpha-1,4 linkage, just like plant starch, except that this molecule is highly branched. Some people call glycogen animal starch because plants use starch as their storage organ. For example, a potato is actually a stem that the plant uses to store starch. And in case the plant runs into time when it is unable to photosynthesize, doesn't have sufficient water, it can break down that starch for energy. And just like plants, animals can break down their glycogen for energy. Glycogen tends to be the medium-term storage molecule. For example, if you go to school one day and forget your lunch and have to wait till dinner, then your glycogen will start breaking down. Proteins are another basic molecule we need to have in our diets. And proteins are made up of amino acids. There are 20 amino acids in nature, and they all have this general structure of a central carbon, an acid group, which is why they're called amino acids, and also an amino group. And they have a hydrogen on the central carbon, but they have 20 different R structures, which signify each different amino acid. Some examples of amino acids are shown here. For example, phenylalanine and histidine. And amino acids are linked together to form proteins. The body can synthesize most amino acids from other amino acids. But there are some that are required in your diet. For example, phenylalanine, the one shown here, is required in your diet. Valine, threonine, tryptophan, methionine, leucine, isoleucine, lysine, and histidine are required in the diet. Here's some examples of sources of protein in the diet. And so realize that some of the sources are complete, and complete means that they contain all of the essential amino acids. And others are incomplete, which means they contain some of the essential amino acids. If you are eating an incomplete protein source, then you need to combine it with another protein source. So for example, if you are eating a vegan diet, you might want to combine beans with rice. If you combine beans with rice or beans with corn, then you are getting a complete protein source. Whereas milk on its own is complete, eggs are complete, fish is complete, and soybeans are a type of plant that is a complete protein source. The other essential nutrient in your diet are the lipids. These are the nonpolar molecules or fats. And there are two basic types, the saturated fats and the unsaturated fats. So realize, first off, that the saturated fats are bad for you and the unsaturated fats are good for you. And you do need to have some fat in your diet. Let's look at the general structure of a fatty acid that is saturated versus one that is unsaturated. And so what you can see from the saturated fatty acid is that every carbon in the chain has hydrogens, as many hydrogens as possible attached to it. Every carbon in the chain is saturated with fat. At one end of the chain, you have a methyl group, and at the opposite end of the chain, you have an acid group, hence the name fatty acids. In an unsaturated fatty acid, you have a hydrocarbon chain, again, with a methyl group at the end, but not every carbon in the chain is saturated with hydrogens. One or more can be lacking in hydrogens. And when you see that double bond there, then you realize that there are some missing hydrogens and therefore carbon must bond to itself. This is called an unsaturated fatty acid. Fatty acids may be monounsaturated, meaning they have one double bond, or they may be polyunsaturated, meaning they have more than one double bond. And of course, they have the acid at the end of the molecule. You can tell the difference between saturated fats and unsaturated fats in your kitchen because saturated fats are solid at room temperature. For example, butter. And butter is solid at room temperature. And the fat that is found in meat is solid at room temperature. And in bacon, for example, when you cook bacon, then the fat becomes a liquid, and then if you take the bacon out of the pan, you have this oily mixture in the pan. But if you let the pan sit at room temperature, then that oily mixture will turn back into a solid. And that's how you know that bacon has saturated fat, which is not good for you. On the other hand, in your kitchen, you can tell the unsaturated fats because they are liquid at room temperature. And so this oil that you see in this picture is an unsaturated fat. Oils can come from many sources. They could be olive oil, sunflower oil, corn oil. And notice that these are all plant products. Why are saturated fats so bad for you and unsaturated fats so good for you? Well, saturated fats tend to lead to the buildup of plaques in the arteries. And fats and cholesterol build up in the arteries can impair blood flow. And when blood flow to the organs and especially the heart is impaired, then that can lead to a heart attack. Buildup of plaques in the bloodstream is called atherosclerosis. You might think that you're just going to stay away from fats altogether. That's actually not a good idea because parts of the body require fat. For example, fat is making up part of our brain. It surrounds the neurons and leads to the formation of the myelin sheath, which is very important in transmitting nervous impulses. And also, fat is energy storage molecule. This is the primary way that we store energy in our bodies. We're talking about long-term energy. Fat is also a good insulator and protects our body from cold, so it's involved in thermoregulation. One type of fat that's important to mention is trans fats. And I'm putting trans fats over on the side of the slide with butter and bacon and meat because trans fats are really bad for you. And they kind of act like saturated fats in the bloodstream, and they can lead to the buildup of plaques. And so trans fats are actually unsaturated fats, and scientists tried to add the hydrogens back to the molecule, and that basically rearranged some of the atoms in the molecule and led to what we call a trans fat. And trans fats are found in substances like margarine, or any item where you see on the label partially hydrogenated soybean oil. And so you have to watch out for trans fats and keep them out of your diet. Trans fats can also be obtained when you go to a fast food restaurant. And when cooks use hot oil and then cool it down and reuse the oil over and over again, that can change the molecular structure of the oil so that an unsaturated fat becomes a trans fat. Certain fatty acids are essential in our diet, and I've put them here. These are linoleic acid and alpha-linolenic acid. And these should be taken into the diet. Most fats the body can synthesize on its own, but it is important to take these particular fatty acids into the diet. This linoleic acid is an omega-6 fatty acid. And how do we know it's an omega-6 fatty acid? The omega carbon is the one at the end, and so we count 6 carbons in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if there is a double bond on that carbon, then it is an omega-6 fatty acid. Omega-6 fatty acids can be found in most oils and in grains and nuts. Alpha-linolenic acid is an omega-3 fatty acid. And so we know it's an omega-3 fatty acid because the double bond is 3 carbons from the omega carbon, which is number 1. And omega-3 fatty acids are the ones found in fish, and they are also found in nuts and in most oils. This is a triglyceride molecule. This is the form that fat is found in our diets. And so the triglyceride is a glycerol molecule and 3 fatty acids. These are broken down in the small intestine by an enzyme called intestinal lipase and also pancreatic lipase from the pancreas. And triglyceride will be broken down into glycerol and fatty acids, which are then absorbed into the lacteal, which is actually part of the lymphatic system. So fatty acids have a unique way of being carried through the body, but the lymph system eventually joins up with the circulatory system, and fatty acids do make their way into the circulatory system. They are stored in the liver as triglycerides, and they're also stored in adipose cells as triglycerides. And then when the body needs energy, the triglycerides are broken down again into fatty acids and glycerol, and then the fatty acids are stripped off in 2-carbon entities and sent into the Krebs cycle, where they lead to the formation of ATP. And so you can break down your fatty acids and eventually get ATP from them. Quite a bit more ATP per fatty acid molecule than per glucose molecule. Of course, that also depends on the length of the fatty acid chain. But these are your major energy source. Energy is expressed as calories. And we get about 9 calories per gram of fat, but we only get about 4 calories per gram of protein or carbohydrate. So if calories indicate the amount of energy that you get from a molecule, you get over double the amount of calories from a gram of fat as you get from a gram of protein or carbohydrate. And that's why our body stores fats for energy. In addition to carbohydrates and lipids and proteins, the body needs vitamins as a basic nutrient. If you're eating a healthy diet, you really don't need to buy vitamin supplements. Although many people buy vitamin supplements just to make sure that they have the right vitamins in their diet. 2 major categories of vitamins exist. There are the water-soluble vitamins, vitamins B and C, and there are a number of different B vitamins, and they are all water-soluble. And then there are the fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamins A, D, E, and K. And we care about whether they're water-soluble or fat-soluble in case we're going to be taking a vitamin supplement. For example, if you're taking a fat-soluble vitamin, then you want to make sure that you take in with it some sort of fat, for example, milk. And on the other hand, vitamins C and B you can take with water because they easily dissolve in water. But what are vitamins? Vitamins are basically coenzymes. You can think of them as enzyme helpers. They're actually pretty large molecules. The B vitamins, for example, B vitamins are coenzymes that are involved in the electron transport chain. And so you can see that lacking in B vitamins might make you feel like you don't have as much energy as you otherwise would. Some vitamins, such as vitamin A, for example, is involved in vision. And so vitamin A leads to the synthesis of retinal, which is one of your vision pigments. And so they say if you are experiencing night blindness, you might want to eat more carrots, which are very high in vitamin A. On the other hand, vitamin K is involved in blood clotting, and so it assists one of the blood clotting factors. Vitamin D is important for calcium absorption. It's actually required for calcium absorption, and is actually now classified as a hormone because it acts synthesized from a molecule in the skin and then moves through the bloodstream to assist with the absorption of calcium through the intestinal lining. Then vitamin E, on the other hand, is an antioxidant which sops up free radicals, which are single electron atoms that have been found to cause damage to membranes. The other basic nutrient you need in your diet are the minerals. Some minerals are necessary in large amounts. For example, sodium and potassium, magnesium, calcium, phosphorus, and chlorine. And then there are the minerals required in trace amounts. For example, zinc, iron, manganese, fluorine, copper, molybdenum, chromium, and selenium. And minerals are cofactors. Again, cofactors are kind of like coenzymes in the sense that they assist enzymes in carrying out their function. And then finally, our bodies require water. Water makes up over half of the body's weight. Your blood plasma, or the fluid in your blood, is about 90% water. Water is required for chemical reactions. It carries wastes and nutrients in the blood, and it is required to maintain your body temperature. Without water, you become dehydrated, and your body cannot function. So how much water do you need per day? The body needs about 2,500 mils per day. You get about 1,500 mils from fluid, about 750 mils from food, about 250 mils as a byproduct of metabolism. And then you lose about 2,500 ml per day, either in urine, your body's evaporation, or in feces. And that ends our lecture on nutrients. Thank you for listening.